Four strangers or semi-strangers, for various reasons, found themselves drawn to Office 3E of the Kent Building at Ravenbrook University in the sprawling metropolis city of Queensborough. You were all drawn there for various purposes, but discovered that the resident of the office, one Archibald Moore, was missing. And in fact, the police had already become involved and were trying to figure out what the heck had happened. Just as you all arrived and were beginning to acquaint yourself with the scene, a sort of slice of fairy space interposed itself into the middle of the building, sending you all into a weird hybrid world that was part primordial Fae forest, part academic office. You fought your way through, fighting off both what seemed to be enslaved Fae of some kind through unusual means, as well as campus campus residents and passersby who seem to have been swept up in the space and polymorphed into dinosaurs. You entered a final battle with far less than half your strength, where you found your contact, Dr. Moore, had been turned into a giant Tyrannosaurus. You found that the Archisaurus was snoozing contentedly, while a female Fae, who you later discovered to be a dryad, was rifling through the contents of his office looking for something. You managed to, through a well-placed message, convince the Archisaurus that he was on your side, and together you fought your way through the Fae, defeating the Dryad and all of her minions, and discovering that they too had been subject to these strange, sort of compelling brands of some kind. It appears that whatever they were being sent to find, they were a little vague because of the magic controlling them, but it seemed that they had been sent to steal a box of artifacts and items from Dr. Moore's office. You rescued him. He unpolymorphed when you defeated the nearby pixie, sending Zyra toppling for a moment, but she caught herself with an excellent acrobatics roll. Dr. Moore then revealed that he is actually a black sheep of the Blackthorne Circle, a powerful group of mages and wizards who call Queensborough home, and he was just in the midst of telling you more about it when the Fae space around you began to dissolve, bringing you back into the real world. So we resume with you all now. The trees and things are still visible, but they're rapidly fading. And the sort of dimensions of the room have recompressed. You can actually see that the room hasn't quite come back together correctly. Like, you see strange places where, like, shelves that used to be connected are now, like, offset or at weird angles to each other. The room reeks of alcohol now. Apparently, there was something smashing through Archie's alcohol collection that he keeps stashed in the depths of his office. So now all of that has returned and is like dampening the carpet.
Wonderful.
So now you have a winded and traumatized Dr. Archibald Blackthorne Moore, as he revealed himself. And for just a moment, you can see that the Dryad is still sort of half in the space. But she's rapidly fading just as the surroundings are. So what do you want to do?
Does anybody know how to freeze her?
Does anybody... All of you speak Sylvan. Get something from her before she disappears. Just even a single word.
Yeah.
Do you have the did you make a sketch of the rune, or you just thought you could?
thought I could. I haven't had a chance to write it down.
Okay.
But you did feel you had memorized it well enough to be able to identify it in the future.
Can I say who did this to you?
You see her now sort of almost fully transparent. You're seeing sort of the wall and the window behind her. You can still see that deep groove across the back of her neck where that last blow disrupted the magic that was binding her. And she seems to be losing strength, but she says, he had iron. He had an artifact, it was something awful. And when he spoke, it was hard to remember. He spoke us into the world. I was in Fairy, and then he was... And she looks at Archie and says, he was like this one.
Blackthorne?
A human?
You see her getting sort of literally and mentally fuzzy. And she says, not of his blood, but the magic, and the word she uses there, the Sylvan word is like feels, tastes, perceives as. And she basically tells you his magic tastes the same.
Okay.
And as she continues to fade out, you just hear her whisper very faintly, "Thank you." And then the room has fully reasserted itself. It is disheveled and not quite fit together correctly. And actually, through the open door, you can see that a lot of the folks there are still sort of asleep on the ground, including all of the officers and students and folks who are there. You also see a few who look a little bit more battered than the others. Some of whom are more sprawled against the wall or in weird, awkward poses. And you recognize some of the former velociraptors scattered amongst the group. Archie he's just freaking out, well, it has been a day. And he looks at his watch and he says, "Oh my, I was supposed to meet with Argus this morning. But I don't know. I have a few members of my family who still speak to me on occasion, and Argus was helping me to verify this information and help me figure out what was happening. And he said he had more things to pass along. I meant to go before my meeting with Stephen's draconic protege here, but I'm afraid something might have happened to him as well."
And you were supposed to come sit in the front row, too.
It was a busy morning. It turned out to be quite busy in a different way.
Yes.
Argus has always been an early riser, and I meant to be there quite early, but I remember coming back from Luz. I bowed out a little early in light of my obligations this morning. I was going to meet Argus for breakfast, and he had some information to give me, and the Fae were already here when I returned to my office.
Colby, real quick, let's assume there are windows and that we would know approximately what time it is, even if our watches don't work.
Yeah.
What time of day is it now?
You have actually not been gone very long at all. In fact, it's close enough that it's hard to get a precise count. You would imagine it's been like less than half an hour. It feels like longer to you all, but just sort of looking out the window, and especially you as a Ravenbrook faculty member, you kind of have a feel for like how people move around campus and what time and
Well, also, I would assume since this is my hallway, I'd know like approximately where the shadows should be.
yeah, between the trees outside and actually you notice there's not very many students moving around, which makes you think it's like the middle of a class block, not close to a transition point. It's probably only about 9:30 now.
Give a really early speech.
Yeah.
Of course, you can pack the halls because you are
Right.
the esteemed Dr. Skylark.
The contact hours until 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So not very much time has passed. You are starting to hear some like groggy like ugh, from people in the hall starting to sort of come back to their senses.
So you say that your Argus never showed up?
Well, I was meant to meet with him, but just putting two and two together, if Fae creatures have been targeting Blackthorne affiliated wizards, it stands to reason he might have been a victim as well.
Do we need to go find him? Do you need help finding him?
I would certainly appreciate it. My spell casting is much improved from the pre intersect days, but I wouldn't be here if I hadn't been a little lackluster on that account. And you see him kind of like just sort of gesture a little bit, and some sparks pop, but not much. Yeah, I was gonna say by Auric standards, it's like, you know, you're a flamethrower and he's a Zippo, you know.
I mean, Archie, we'd want to. This Argus sounds not only important to you, but also important to whatever is going on around here right now. But also, I think we've all taken a bit of a beating. Is this something that we can rest for, or do we need to head out directly?
He looks at his watch again and thinks, I honestly don't know. He reaches into the drawer of his desk and starts fiddling around, and he says, blasted Dryad was everywhere in here. And he pulls out his cell phone, and you can see that a broken branch has like fully phased through his cell phone when the room came back together. And he just looks at it and says, quite disappointing. I don't believe... I don't remember any numbers anymore. It's... I can't say that there's no danger, but Argus is a far more capable master of the arcane than I am. I know for a fact that he has a number of fail-safes and defensive enchantments laid into his home. I wouldn't say that there's no risk, but he, if anyone, he might be able to fend them off. I suppose we might have some time.
Real quick, remind me above game. I can still shift the mantle continuously. I just don't get the advantage, right?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
like an extra special, like when you change it that way, there's almost like a shimmering aura of charm and illusion that weaves together and works on people who look at it.
Okay. I'm going to shift it back into a uniform. And I want to go wake up the officer who was wearing the Solinus stole.
All right. So he's easy to find. He seemed to have just dropped like right out in the hallway. He was actually like standing almost between you and the door when everything happened. So you head back out. You find the officer sort of collapsed on the ground, his stole sort of awkwardly half falling off of his neck. And you actually see he's starting to wake up a little quicker than anyone else. You imagine that he's probably of a sturdier sort. And it doesn't take much to sort of move him to full consciousness. And he kind of stirs and sort of blinks and looks up. What happened? Who are you?
I'm Officer Black. Detective Avery sent me. He needs my team to go rendezvous and check in on another civilian. I need you to take charge here, cordon off the area, make sure the civilians are fine. But my team got a little banged up. If you've got any, if you have any healing assistance so that we can go check in on this next asset, I'd appreciate it.
Make a deception check.
Steaming.
12.
Let's get him an insight score. Need to actually build him as an NPC. He kind of gives you a... He still seems a little out of it from his recent brush with Fae magic, and you all are honestly very injured, and he's not just going to, like, ignore that. You also gather maybe doesn't fully believe you. So, he is going to... Amazingly, the NPC I pulled up was called Healer, had no healing spells. D&D Beyond, what are you doing to me?
Somebody has a misnamed job description here.
Yep. I am now pulling up one of my pre-gen Muppet characters for a game this weekend. And
Nice.
so it is the guy in front of you healing you, but his stats are of a green frog puppet.
Awesome. Can we do team?
Oh, because it's the sidekick base, so you get to pick their spells. They're not built into the block.
Oh, no. He was like one of those Magic the Gathering campaign setting side whatever. Anywho, now I have actual heals. So we're just going to say he's being real quick about it. And he's going to use a Prayer of Healing, level 3. All of you are going to regain 21 hit points.
Okay. So I'm fine now.
He kind of stumbles a little bit through the casting.
As many as I
I don't even have 21 hit points.
Yeah, this is one of his big spell slots. He's maybe not making great decisions.
Okay. Well, Archie's good now.
maybe it'll, help out wake everybody else up too.
Yeah, and you can actually see that it also catches all of the most damaged previous velociraptors, so that there's still like some bruises and some cuts and things, but they look more like they fell through some bushes and less like they were almost beat to death by a barbarian bartender.
It happens. Don't mess around with my bar.
Yeah, definitely not the first folks that Lexi has had to beat up. Although usually it's people who deserve it more.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
Does he have a badge? Does he have a nameplate?
Yes, you can see, and you would know this because of your sort of unusual background. You recognize that he is a lieutenant, and his name is his last name is Davis. And he starts to sort of get a little more with it, and he says, "You're Officer Black? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Are you with... You're not with SCU. What department are you with?"
I'm on loan at the moment, but I appreciate your time. Gotta go check in on somebody else. I'll leave you to take care of the scene here.
He's giving you kind of a skeptical look. But how... What is sort of everyone else doing as this conversation is happening?
I'm in my office, taking a drink and changing a set of shoes.
All right.
Anybody else who followed me in is welcome to have a drink.
I'm probably wherever Archie is at that moment because he's the only one I really know.
And I'm probably in the doorway between Archie and the conversation because I was supposed to meet with Archie, but I'm interested in what's going on in the hallway.
So in that case, everyone except Zyra, make an insight check. It's nothing dire. It's just fun.
It's usually the person who has the highest insight.
Yep.
12.
13.
Well, I got a 22.
Good for you.
I think only Lexi and Cyrus catch him sort of like stumble for a second. He's in the middle of this sort of skeptical questioning, and then he sort of gets an unfocused look. Auric, I mean, we'll be straight up. You're not human. And so the cues are a little bit different. I would think amongst your sort of immediate kin, it would probably have more to do with like the raising of frills and, scale patterns and things. But you catch a definite like you're watching as you're sort of eavesdropping, and Lieutenant Davis, just for a second over sort of both of your shoulders, sees Lexi, and you watch him kind of like, and then, wait, what was I saying? Okay.
What can I say?
So he says, all right, sure, you're patched up, they're patched up. I've got to call back to the station anyway, so you just kind of hang out here. And he sort of walks just a little bit up the hallway and pulls out a cell phone and starts pecking away.
Okay. I'll head back in the office and ask Archie where we should go look for Argus.
Archie's kind of getting his head back together and says, oh, yes, Argus, unlike myself, his falling out with some of the rest of the family was a bit more dramatic. He actually has his own place on Riverside. It's a fair bit of distance from here, but I'm deeply concerned for him.
If we go retrieve him, should we bring him anywhere?
Honestly, he'll probably have a better idea of what's going on than I would. Let me think. I imagine if he is forewarned, at least the caliber of creatures that we have seen thus far are unlikely to pose much difficulty for him. As long as they don't catch him by surprise, he would likely be okay.
Okay. Give us some directions.
And he gives you an address, and it's actually... well, I'll have all of you make a history check.
Well,
7.
14.
Oh, 20.
10.
That was sort of a weird distribution of information. So, Cyrus, this would... You've made it your job to kind of know what happens in this town. And so you immediately kind of peg what sort of neighborhood that is. And Auric, I imagine that you've probably done like some guided tours, maybe like a bus tour or carriage tour or something around town. And you both peg this address as being about a block off of the eponymous river of Riverside. It is very, very, very expensive neighborhood. This is... The oldest money in town is in Old Imperial, but this is like the next notch past that. It's fancy.
Lexi doesn't know anything about fancy fishy folk.
Archie, is there anything that, if questioned by Argus, we could tell him to prove you sent us?
Ah, yes. I'm glad you said something. Where is it? He goes digging in his desk again. Realizes he's in the wrong drawer. Pulls out a different drawer. Like rips out a bunch of folders. Ah, here it is. Like way down in like the bottom left corner, like underneath all of his files. And he pulls out a mostly smooth gray, like a river stone, one that's been sort of polished by the water. But you can see that it's got a sigil carved deeply into one side. He flips it over, and he takes a ring that, Zyra, you've seen him wearing this all the time, but you've never seen him do this with it. He sort of mutters something and presses the ring to the back of the rock, and a new sigil appears. Not carved, but just sort of like painted with light onto the back of this. He says, "This is a ward stone for Argus's home. This will ensure that if any of his more potent defenses remain undisturbed, you will not find yourselves on the receiving end of them." And he flips it over, and this side marks, well, this is my personal signet, not that I've had much use for it. But it will let him know that I have sent you.
Fabulous.
Real quick, last time that Cyrus said the name Argus, I suddenly perked up, grabbed my phone, and started texting.
Going back through my notes about the stuff. Yes, you actually recall that poor Archie was not going to find Argus. Apparently something happened to Argus yesterday, and Archie had just not caught up with it, apparently.
I think I'll let somebody else drop that bomb. I'll wait until we go out of the building to let the others know.
All right. So are you all... How would you like to try and... Or is there anything else you'd like to do in this area?
Can I ask? So let's assume I've sketched the sigil.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask Archie if he recognizes it?
Let's give Archie an Arcana check.
Do you recognize this?
I'm also making him a Muppet NPC. Because it's all I've got on the top of my D&D Beyond list right now.
I'm sure it just makes him look like Sweetums or something.
Archie got a natural 20. He looks at it and you see his eyes go wide and he goes, "My word, this is the arcane signet of a powerful Fae noble. Where did you see this?"
On the back of everybody's neck.
He was hunting through your office.
Oh, that
Branded in
is...
cold iron.
Yeah, that's important.
Oh, that is quite bad. Quite bad indeed.
What we thought.
I don't know what is happening, but we have gone from playing with matches to juggling dynamite.
Awesome.
I think I would like to go put myself behind some powerful magical wards and remain there for some time. But I will get this cell phone replaced. So you'll be able to contact me if you find anything out.
We'll give you a call.
He now looks very nervous and like starts gathering a few things, grabs a bag, stuffs it all in, and makes his way out surprisingly quick for a very large guy.
Wait, can he give us a name, or is he not giving us a name?
Oh no, he doesn't know. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
He is very panicked. He doesn't know a specific name. He's just able to recognize like the markers of it. This is top class. This isn't, any random like human wizard might have a signet because it's just like a thing. But Fae, in fairy, power and identity go together. Things that have very distinctive personalities and identities also tend to be very, very powerful. And so for something to be distinctive enough to have its own symbolism, its own sort of aesthetic attached to it, means that it is way up on the power scale.
Well, with Archie now out of the room, I will turn to Police Officer Cyrus. So, we can still go to the Argus Blackthorne household if you want to, but we're not going to find him there. So I think I told you that I was sent here by Steve Barnes, Officer Steve.
Mm-hmm.
He told me that part of the reason why I was coming here was because of a series of break-ins, the latest of which was at Argus Blackthorne's house. And he caught the perps in the act and is now in the ICU.
Argus's.
Yes. So if we want to talk to him, we can go to the hospital and see if he's conscious.
You might need some protection.
Ward his space?
Sorry, say that again.
Do we need someone to ward the ICU?
I don't know. It depends on if they were going for him personally. It sounds like he just walked in when they were trying to steal from him.
Just for giggles, everybody make a history check.
Hey, that's a better number.
10.
Woo, 10.
Something plus something. Hold on. 16.
All right. I thought this was going to be a fairly easy one to get, and Syra is the only one who got there. When you hear the name Argus Blackthorne, you have sort of a tickling at the back of your memory, like, I know this name. Like, this, not someone you know personally, but like, this is another sort of big deal person. You vaguely recall that there was some kind of friction within the Blackthorne circle, not like super recently, but maybe like 5 years ago, as sort of the current power dynamic emerged, and the conflict sort of revolved around two factions, one led by Reginald Blackthorne, who's the current sort of head and figurehead of the family, the other revolving around an Argus Blackthorne.
Okay.
Did Officer Barnes happen to mention if the the people breaking in were stopped, that Argus stopped them?
I don't think he did. Or sorry, I think that they didn't get stopped, is what I mean to say.
Okay.
I don't know for certain. It's possible, but either way, if we go to that house, it's going to be going to a crime scene, probably an active crime scene. Which maybe we do want to do, because this is we need to figure this out.
Like, I want to go, but I have no idea what I have no idea what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So 2 things that might be helpful here. The first, I meant to give you an actual item for this, but just something to know. Cyrus does have like certain. You don't have as many like special sort of passphrases as like a normal NBI agent would, but you do have a couple of like signs and countersigns that would let you theoretically override local authorities if you need to, but your use of it is under much more scrutiny. So you'd have to like explain what you were doing at some point in the future. The second thing is go ahead and make I'm going to call this a history check. Just you.
Just Cyrus?
Yep.
All right, I'm sticking with my physical dice. 22.
All right. So you have a very intricate knowledge of how the QPD works. If it's been more than 12, 24 hours, there might be someone there still kind of keeping an eye on the place, but it's certainly not going to be like swarming with police officers at this point. They've probably put up their tape and their do not enter paraphernalia, but are not hanging out. It also occurs to you, because you rolled very well, that perhaps a bunch of students getting turned into dinosaurs will occupy the attention of that particular department for the near future.
It might be important.
No.
Just saying.
Yeah. So, with lack of anything better to do, I say we go check it out, and maybe somebody was sloppy on the way out, and we can learn something.
Yeah.
All right.
At the very least, we'll find fairy dust.
All right.
So, how do you all want to exit from this
You want to have a car?
building / situation? Well, first, you're in your office. You're fine. You work here. I got to remember that pointing to you all isn't helpful because you're not where I... Zyra is fine because you work here. The rest of you are in sort of a weird situation, and Lieutenant Davis seems like he's probably going to be off the phone here in just a moment. So how would you like to make your egress from the situation?
You want to follow me down the back way?
Sure.
By the way, hi.
I'm gonna change into Ravensbrook University like sweatshirt and like.
Well, you'll have to tell me about that. So, is this your real face?
Yeah.
Great.
Making sure my ring is still working.
That's not yours.
Actually, wait. Do we have to walk past Lieutenant Davis, or is there a different way out?
He is standing sort of out the door and to the right. Zyra's office is on the left, but he's only probably 5 feet away from the door. Make an insight check. Everybody can make this.
18.
Well, 17.
6.
6.
Good
I got
Lord.
a 5.
I don't like this
All right. So Zyra and Cyrus, you both kind of gather. You're starting to notice like people in the hallway are getting up. There's a lot of confusion. There's now not like yelling, but there are a lot of voices talking. You might have a moment here to kind of slip out.
All right, strange thing. You want to come with us? And I assume I've been to Lexi's bar at least once.
Probably.
If it's
Wait,
some
am I strange thing or
Yes,
strange thing?
you're strange thing. I'm Lexi because I run the bar, so everybody knows my name. But at Kish, we listened to that one earlier today while we were making dinner.
I'm not a strange thing. I'm Auric.
Hi, Auric. It's good to meet you.
Y'all are the strange ones.
It's possible that I've even stopped by Archie's office before throughout the years of him being a regular, just because, what is bartending but a weird version of pastoral care?
Well, and also, Zyra and Lexi would both know this, and now you all can smell it. Archie did keep some of the finer product of his rare liquor hunting in his office, possibly in violation of several campus policies.
Probably.
And so, yeah, it's entirely possible that on, just sort of a friendly outing, he might have invited you by to try some new rare concoction he had found from somewhere around the world. All right. So led by Zyra, who looks like she works here because she does, you all start to make your exit. Most of you kind of get a good ways away. Lexi is kind of trailing. And you see Davis on the phone, and he finally manages to sort of realize you all are moving, and he turns.
Cast minor illusion of somebody calling his name from the other end of the hallway.
He starts forward like he's wanting to say something, and then he hears it and he goes and goes back the other way. All right. There is very good public transportation in Queensboro. It would be easy to find a bus that would run you there. There are not quite, because of the socioeconomics of it, there are not quite so many subway stations and bus stops actually in Riverside, but it would certainly put you close.
We don't want the rabble going to Riverside.
Yeah.
With public transit, there are more public transit spaces in more wealthy areas. That's how Atlanta's laid out.
Well,
Not DC though.
yeah, not here. These people are so rich, like in real estate that costs a fortune. These people have. Sorry, it makes me think maybe I haven't conveyed the scale of it. These are people who have private drivers on retainer. This is the wealth of the neighborhood you're talking. This isn't like a fairly nice area. This is like, this is where like major politicians live and, movers and shakers of industry. These people have garages where that square footage would buy you buildings in other parts of town.
I look around a little bit nervously and go to button up the top button of my sweater vest and then realize the Dryad still has it.
Cute.
Womp womp. So y'all are easily able to navigate your way over. Is there anything y'all want to do or talk about on your way?
So I'm Auric. Nice to meet you all.
Are you a recent transplant?
Recent enough. Started to learn my way around town, mostly.
Fair.
I was trying to remember. Hang on.
Mm.
Do 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 do. Wait, no, sorry, that's my Thursday game.
You guys gonna do that? Okay.
I guess while Cyrus is looking up what Cyrus is looking up, I guess I would probably start going over what Steve has told me about the case, figuring that it's probably not secret. And I'm assuming that Cyrus is a police officer because that's the identity that he has most frequently used.
I am curious, how close to character is the picture that you have on D&D Beyond?
Oh, I tried to get it as close as possible.
Oh, no, sorry, for Cyrus.
Oh, for Cyrus.
For those who can't see it, it has a very, like, rapscallion air to it. And so sort of imagining that in the conversations has been making me laugh.
Yeah, the grin is not. He does not have that grin.
The grin, the long hair.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can send y'all. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's just like, you can trust me.
Go ahead and trust me.
All right. Any other conversations? Any stops y'all want to make?
So what was your lecture this morning?
Not so much a lecture as a telling. I tell stories and study the stories. Well, for a long time, they were just stories. The stories of the Fae. And it's really changed my scholarship to know that it's history now instead of folklore. But it's also been interesting to see how the folklore, which channels remain the same and which ones changed, and which ones in their changing on the Fae side and on the human side, both seem to follow the same trails as they came down history. So I tell stories.
I've been mulling a word, but I didn't recognize when before we shifted back, the Dryad mentioned Tuatha. Is that in any of your stories?
The Colby will assume I know what's in the
Make a. This could be history or religion, whichever you prefer, and you can roll it with advantage.
Whoa, okay, I'm gonna roll it with advantage. That's better. It's 18 plus whatever my modifier is. They're the same. Because they're both intelligence. 21.
All right. Yeah, with a 21, that name is immediately familiar. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, the Tuatha, they're one of the more hidden.
They would occupy a similar space to, in sort of the mythology of the Fae. They're a little bit like the Titans to the Fae's Olympians. They were something more spooky and scary and primal and massive, that occupied a similar space and then were displaced somehow by sort of the current Fae at some point way, way in the past. There are still. Go ahead.
Do they are they teleporters?
With such a high roll, you would know that the Tuatha are still sort of around, but they are somewhat faded. So, in moments where they sort of can recapture a bit of their former power, they are as or more powerful than like Fey nobles currently.
Okay.
But then at other times they're almost ghosts.
Okay.
So if they're sort of at their peak, they can do anything they want.
Huh. I guess I must have spooked her somehow then.
Did you say that they're
Did she
not
say
gone?
She said it around me. I don't know if she was saying it to me. She seemed to be reacting to my magic, but perhaps just fear.
Oh,
What was that, Or?
I meant to ask you, what are you? Because you look human, but that was not human.
What was this?
All the raveny things. All the raveny things. I was going to ask who sent you, and then your face dropped and it became another human face, and I got very confused.
That was the point.
Out of curiosity, has Cyrus... So I know Cyrus has used Hex before, but has it ravened like that before?
I think that's up to you.
Okay. No idea. Usually, it's never done the birds before. Usually it's just some small shadows. I assume something about the weirdness of that place. Forest turned it into birds. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with the Dryad. I think you're too often.
Sorry, bud. I'm human.
And this would be a good sort of reference point for Auric. Tuatha are boogeymen. That's sort of the place they currently occupy in Fae culture. Like, you know they're real on some level, but it's the kind of thing of like...
you're dead?
Yeah, it's like...
So assuming that... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Assuming that Zyra repeated what you said about them still being around in some way, I am really not okay right now.
Yeah, you were probably told as a child, like, go to bed, little Auric, or the Baelor will come and drag you away into the dark.
Yeah. That's what I'm picturing.
Yeah. Just something like, eat your vegetables or Bronn will come for you.
What?
So you don't believe me? We could ride this. We could hop on another bus over to Vert. I'll go introduce you to my folks.
I might take you up on that, but work first.
Fair enough.
I don't know, Cyrus. After the intersecting, what was the thing when the worlds came back together?
The demand.
No, not the demand. The
Is it what Archie called the intersect?
intersect. After
Oh
the
yeah.
after the intersect, a lot's been shifting. Things we didn't recognize. Could. Things we didn't recognize that could have.
Yeah, maybe none of you are as human as you think you are.
I mean, no one is looking at my ears.
I mean, all you pink things with your ears, they look the same to me.
This is fair.
So, just for context setting, which form of transport did you all choose to use?
Well, I'm assuming bus. You said that bus would probably get us closer.
Yeah. So as you all are sort of chatting, probably a little bit towards the back of the bus, like not necessarily wanting a lot of, bus mates to join in the conversation. You can see Ravenbrook kind of sits at the edge of Old Imperial. And Old Imperial being sort of it's the fanciest part of town, the most expensive, but it's also sort of the historical district. Literal mansions. And so as you are sort of making your way on the back of this bus, you watch as you draw closer and closer to what you know to be the Vance River. And you can see there's a weird sense in traveling through Queensboro of like moving through time, because the neighborhoods, most of them sort of developed their identity in different eras of history. And so Old Imperial has a very ancient feel, very for the players, you might think of it as something like there's a fancy name for it. Pre-revolution France. Very sort of just this side of gaudy and luxurious. As you move more into Riverside, think more almost more like a wealthier area of New York. You're talking about buildings now that are maybe, the oldest might be 150-ish years old.
Mm-hmm.
They're post-Republic, so they're still very old and very sort of storied neighborhoods, but they're not quite in the same historical ballpark. And so as you get close to your destination, it's almost like you're moving backwards through time. The farthest edges of Riverside are the sort of newer, sleeker, modern type buildings. And every block or so, it's like you're moving further and further back. It drops you off still several blocks from the actual river. And what do you want to do?
Oh, I guess we're walking.
Guess we're going to wander towards Argus's house.
Yeah.
Unless any of you can you pull a car out of that coat?
It'd be pretty impressive, but probably not.
No, but just for fun, I'm going to shift it into a suit.
And that's a good thing. You all do attract a little bit of attention. Probably more Lexi than anybody. It is still quite cold, but like Zyra is kind of in that weird sort of academic space that always kind of looks both a little alien and a little bit like, oh, this is someone I should respect. The suit kind of helps you blend. Yeah, Auric and Lexi are a little bit the odd humanoids out in this cluster, but also this is a very respectability driven neighborhood, and no one is quite interested enough to raise a fuss. But you do get weird looks.
I'm used to it. I work in a bar. Everybody looks at you weird.
I wouldn't begin these looks if I still had my sweater vest.
I'm sure about that.
That's what's wrong.
So you discover that the address that Archie gave you for Argus is about really just one or two streets off of the river, with the river being the oldest and most ridiculous homes. You find a row of very expensive, very old, they would be townhouses, except that they're larger than that would suggest. A townhouse in another section of the town would be like a third of this size. They're almost more like just houses in the shape of a townhouse, all sort of in rows. This whole street has this beautiful sort of aged, deep red brick exterior. You see more elements of that imperial style here that sort of call back to the neighborhood you just came from. A lot of like big sort of protruding bay windows and little accents. The address leads you to a 3-story building. And to figure out where... Yeah, townhouse-shaped mansions is about the best way to describe it. Just sort of ballparking. If there was Queensboro Zillow, like these places are unfathomably expensive. Like, you know, even Cyrus, if you were to like really work your tail off making NBI money, even Zyra, if you were to crank out a bestseller, you'd be hard pressed to move even several blocks away from here. That's the kind of neighborhood you're in. As you draw closer, you can see that there is in fact some kind of note from the QPD like plastered up on the door. I'm assuming y'all are kind of starting a little ways further back and not just like running up. Make
Every door? Or just the main door?
so the way it's structured, as far as you can tell from the front, there's only the one primary entrance on this street. There could be another entrance, maybe on the back of the building, but you're just seeing the one currently. What do y'all want to do?
No people, just the note on the...
Make a... We'll call this perception or insight, whichever...
Okay, there's my first natural 20 of the game.
30, 20.
11.
So which did Zyra and Auric do? Perception or insight?
I did insight.
Perception.
Okay. So Zyra, you don't see any like... There's not like a squad car just chilling out. It looks like things have basically been wrapped up for now. And honestly, this is a fancy enough neighborhood that unusual folks like yourselves, there's a lot of patrols in this neighborhood. They're not necessarily going to like keep a car sitting here permanently. They're expecting that if anything weird happens, there's someone close by.
Neighborhood watch.
Yeah. Maybe even private security. Like
Private security, yeah.
in this neighborhood, yeah. Auric catches that there's no like visible police officers, but you are still gathering a lot of attention from people around you. And you kind of catch a few like the pre-Karen moment of like the neighbor like pulls back the drapes and like they've already got their phone up like there are these strange people outside that poor Mr. Blackthorne's house. So you're drawing attention, but none of it seems to be official yet.
I turn and very obviously wave at the first person in the window I see.
Pulls it to and disappears. All right, what do y'all want to do?
I'm gonna try the ward to see if it'll just open the door.
All right. As you get closer, you feel the ward stone start to hum a little bit, and you do have very acute senses, and you were already kind of like paying attention to what was around you. With the ward stone, it makes you more conscious, like there's almost tangible energy coming off of parts of this house. As you approach, though, you feel it kind of almost sort of parting and flowing around you, like the ward stone is creating a bubble as you move forward.
Keep close, don't go into your edges. Edge.
So, as you come to the door, you can see actually a very strange tableau here. The first thing is a notice in very sort of large, fairly large print with a lot of like small subprint. A notice from the QPD that this is an area that is currently under investigation and unauthorized members of the public are not meant to be trespassing through here on penalty of blah, 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 blah. It's what's behind that that's a little strange. The door has what you would take to be burn marks. It looks like, yeah, there's a sort of charred spot near where the door handle is. And actually, once you see that, you notice there's several more along the ground, sort of up on this stoop. And you can kind of see actually over to one of the bay windows, and someone has put up like temporary, almost like a tarp across a window that's been busted.
Mm.
Yeah, that tracks.
Okay.
Anything? Sorry.
Um,
Anything that about the burn marks that would seem, apart from being burns, that would seem unusual.
Make. I'll let y'all choose investigation or arcana. Both intelligence based, so.
Oh, a whole 11.
Oh, come on.
Definitely going investigation.
Cyrus, you're supposed to be good at
Very
these.
low
I knew
roll.
I did a natural one.
Oh no.
Man.
6.
Oh no.
I'm almost tempted to. I think I've still got a bardic inspiration from last. I'm almost tempted to burn it.
Do it. It does.
Do it.
It. Oh, you could roll it with the die itself can be rolled with advantage.
Okay. And I got a 2.
The bardic inspiration can be rolled with advantage.
Oh, it doesn't roll the.
The bardic inspiration die can be rolled again.
Oh, I thought
When
it
you
was-
add it to ability check, the die you roll, the bardic inspiration die, is rolled at advantage.
Oh. Okay.
Creation bards are stinking cool.
I'm not okay. Well, I'm not sure then that's going to improve on my natural 1 very much.
Oh. Oh.
I thought I got to roll the d20 with advantage.
Oh. That would be cool, but that's not what it is.
So you all are trying to sort of piece this together, but whew, you're starting to feel kind of uncomfortable from the amount of attention you're receiving.
Let's just
And at the same time, like, y'all are also beat.
We're tired.
You know, you were kind of like relaxing a little bit on the bus, but I mean, some of y'all got like attacked by dinosaurs this morning, or shot with like magic elf sleep poison. Like y'all have had a bit of a morning already, and those of you who are normally quite sharp at this are maybe feeling a little more ragged than you normally would.
I mean, I know Zara doesn't know what this means yet, but any of the things that usually happen when she performs or speaks things into being that she doesn't understand yet, none of that is there. It's only surface. And the surface is running thin.
Mm-hmm. Well, as somebody who's an expert in fire, I can tell you that this was fire.
Great.
You're so smart.
Let's go inside.
You want to go inside?
That's safe.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go inside.
All right. So the door does not explode.
Oh, thank God.
You can actually feel there's since you're holding it, Zyra, you can feel almost the way to think of it is it's like there's waves rolling out from this place, and it's like you have a rock in front of you, and the wave is like crashing against it and splitting around it, and you all are sort of untouched by whatever this is. As you get close to the door, you feel a definite sort of click, and the door does just come open all its own.
See, Karen, we have an invitation.
A curtain twitches. So, your immediate impression as you open this door is almost overwhelming. The interior of Argus Blackthorne's large townhouse here, the aesthetic sense is something like imagine a noble manor of a wealthy person of varied interests who has many fine things. Everything is a very high quality. You see a lot of like polished wood. There's a very sort of warm feel to the space. Now take all of that and cram it into a used bookstore. Not like a chain large bookstore, but like one of those weird small ones that's been there for 100 years.
Yep.
And there's that smell of like old book that hits you. There's no like foyer space. You just immediately walk into like what looks like a study almost. Just walls of bookshelves and little things on display. Stacks of books on the floor. A couple of chairs, and there's a small sort of fireplace. Very expensive, very cramped.
She has been holding out on me. Why did you bring my last here? Anyway.
So what do
So
you all
does the
want to do?
room-
Go ahead.
Does the room itself look put together?
Make another investigation check.
Woo, 14.
All right.
4. What is wrong with these dice?
That one.
This is the flip side of Lexi's like ridiculous Fae Hound critical hit.
Yeah,
This is the scale sort of coming back to 0.
balancing out.
So, Auric, you're actually like, yeah, I got this. I'm an investigator. Okay. Oh, all right. This is the room where the window's broken. You can see there's sort of a bay with like a sort of reading nook set into it. But you can see that one of the windows has been smashed. You see that the room itself overall doesn't seem particularly tossed. It's almost like something broke in and maybe passed through this room, but wasn't fixated on something in it per se. And because you've kind of been forewarned of the MO that's been taking place, you do confirm the window is broken inward. You do find a charred spot on the carpet fairly near the window, and you also find a smattering of now sort of dead, sandy fairy dust.
I scoop a tiny little bit into one of my dragon claws.
You're
You're high,
Make
and
a,
you have make a poison.
make a Constitution save.
seriously.
And actually, you'd be, again, quite familiar with this. There's all different sorts of fairy dust. What most people encounter most of the time, especially something that would be in this world, comes from very low power fae. Something like the pixies and sprites that you met earlier.
The ones that want their rake back.
Yep. And actually, that's sort of what the sort of light effect around those beings is, sort of a pulsing cloud of fairy dust that's illuminated by their magic. But it's also caused by them not having the same kind of powerful control as a more higher ranked fae. So they're just sort of like casually like, smattering power everywhere. And if it's not preserved correctly, it degrades very quickly. If you had like taken that right off of one of those creatures and did that, you might have been in for a good or bad time, depending on what you were going for.
Hey. Who knows?
So can we get a sense of where they were headed in the house?
Yeah.
So sort of from where you're looking, you can see that. Gotta zoom in. The font on this is real weird. So you can see that there is a set of stairs leading up, a set of stairs leading down, what looks like a bathroom and maybe some kind of storage behind it. There's a kitchen and then a small dining area behind it, and a door that seems to open out past that into a garden. And you can kind of see down the whole length of the house from the doorway here.
Which way are the tar marks going?
Which way are the what marks?
Tar marks? The path of egress, the way that we can see. So if we saw someone come in the room, but they went through, where'd they go through to? We follow.
It's a little hard to tell just by looking. The most obvious signs of passage are sort of by the window. From there, it's not quite as clear. You would probably have to like find something or use something to get more of an insight without just sort of looking in additional rooms.
Zyra, you are a scholar.
Hmm.
If you had something vital to your research in a house like this, where do you think you would keep it?
I mean, do you think Argus has 2 studies? Or your bedroom where you're doing your work? Like, it depends, like, vital. What does that mean?
Well, as Archie told us, the common thread seems to be magical items.
So would this be something that you would keep for study or something that you would want to protect? I guess is the question. Would it be hidden or would it be out where you could use it?
That's a great question. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, let's see if they found it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cast Detect Magic
Fair.
All right.
and probably go blind.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many things in here are magic?
Actually, the aesthetic of the place, like visually, and the magic of the place are weirdly parallel. You find so much magic, and it's all sort of just crammed in together. And you're finding like powerful warding magic, basically the equivalent of like trap magic that would fire when someone did certain things. You also just find like a whole host of other sort of just everyday convenience magics. You immediately discern that this place doesn't have like a technological heating AC system. There is literally magic like woven into the stones that always keeps it exactly this temperature. It's even controlling the humidity for the books.
Wow.
You find. Go ahead.
Even with the broken window.
So you basically find the equivalent of like a gun that's been fired. With the addition of the detect magic and what you all sort of saw, you gather that something basically flung itself at the door trying to get it open. And it's a little macabre, actually. You get the impression that something just kept slamming against the wards till they ran out of power, with no regard for its own safety. It wasn't
Meaning that
like
the wards ran out of power, or until the something ran out of power.
Well, this is where it gets disturbing.
Okay.
You'd be able to sort of see the difference between, like, if something really powerful had just come and smashed through the ward, you'd see that. This is very specifically a lot of things that were not powerful enough to take down the ward by themselves, with no regard for their own lives, flinging themselves like bugs into a bug zapper until the bug zapper runs out of power.
So definitely compelled to do that.
It doesn't seem like something a rational creature would choose to do.
Yeah.
You see all sorts of other stuff. The two sort of brightest areas of the house, because this runs everywhere, because you can see like, what, 60 feet?
$30-foot sphere. Yeah.
30-foot sphere. So that gets you basically the entirety of the building, almost all the way to the roof. And you catch sort of two bright spots. There's a much higher concentration on the top floor, and there's a much higher concentration on some floor below you.
Art,
Up or down?
Art, was the magic that you were talking to Argus about, was it Powerful how? Explodey powerful? Or manipulative powerful? Or...
Oh. You mean the magic I was talking to Archie about?
Yeah.
I actually think, didn't Archie say that it was like training magic? I feel like I remember that.
No. But
Or are you talking?
so Argus was one of your contacts.
No, Argus was one of the connections to my case, but I hadn't actually gotten in touch with him. I was told about him. He was one of the victims.
So what did Archie tell us about the magic items?
He did tell us that, from my notes, I can say that he did tell us that they were like Magic 101, kind of like intro items.
I thought that was the stuff that was in the boxes.
No, that was about what was being stolen. I mean, there could have been some stuff in the boxes, but what was being stolen was intro to magic type items.
Okay. Cool.
And it had both. What Archie had in his office was, again, some of that sort of basic material, but it also had things like lists of these materials and like where they were, things that he had like compiled from members of his family, because they would sort of loosely keep track of where all this stuff is, even the most basic of beginner magic. They don't want that just out there. And so they would know, like, okay, you know, Cousin Archie has this book and Uncle Argus has this book. And there was a lot of, like, you know, highlighted things where he'd gone through and found things that had gone missing and sort of drawn connections. But there were also some of the items in question in the boxes.
Oh, okay.
So then, perhaps,
I always hide down rather than up.
yeah. I was honestly thinking basement as well.
Okay, let's go down.
So ironically, they're not these bright points of magic if they're going for the weaker stuff.
All right. So the door to the basement kind of matches the rest of the building, but as the door sort of creaks open, the vibe of the space is very different. The rest of the building has a very different style to it, and even materials. You feel like you're descending into an old school dungeon at this point. Thick, dark, heavy gray stones just, you know, line the walls here. There's little magical lights kind of kick on, but they only have sort of like a soft orange glow to them. They're just sort of barely illuminating the space. You can immediately feel the magic down here that's sort of controlling the temperature is different. This area is colder than the rest of the house. And everybody make a perception check.
Archie, what are you doing with these people?
15.
Oh, hey, a 17!
What kind of check?
16 perception.
Perception.
I can't do math. 24.
So you all managed to catch... I mean, there's all sorts of other sensory input happening, but the most immediate point of interest is you hear a very, very muffled, like... Is that coming through?
So yeah. Knock? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah.
More like footsteps.
More like thumping?
Yeah, you hear like a thumping sound, and it sounds like a hard thump, but like insulated or blocked somehow. And you hear a little bit of a
Cool. Let's go towards that sound.
Yeah.
Rescue team!
Uh,
Rescue Rangers!
So as you descend further into this space, it is it's like being transported back in time. This area has a sort of darkness to it. There's no natural sunlight. The magical lights are very like faint. This is most obviously a wizard's research space. You see a wall of books, and because Cyrus is still detect magicking, the wall is all different schools and types and intensities of magic. You see what looks like alchemical equipment, just all kinds of small burners and glassware and all sorts of things. You see what sort of dominates much of the center of this area is a complex magic circle. And actually, as you're looking at it, it's not just one circle, it's a bunch of different configurations and types of circle that have actually been laid out in a very neat arrangement where parts of it could be activated or deactivated for different purposes. You imagine this is sort of Argus's personal study. You see some shelves with some different... there's a handful of items that light up magical. There's a few more that look like they're non-magical, but maybe just historically important. And you also find a weird section of blank wall. So you were just upstairs, and you were able to sort of see through the length of this first floor. And you would assume that the basement would roughly somehow correspond to the dimensions that are up above. But this space is only about half as big as what you saw up above. And there's nothing on this section of wall. All the other walls have either the door or the stairwell, or they're covered in shelves and cabinets, and you even see like some like specimen type cages in different places. And this one section of wall is weirdly blank. And as you get closer, you start to hear the sound resolves more into words.
Archie! Archie, is that you? I need you to deactivate the panic room. Let me out.
What happens because we have the ward with us? The ward stone.
So with Cyrus doing his sort of detect magic, you can actually now visualize the way in which it's creating this sort of bubble around you that is stopping all of these traps from triggering. And you can also see that there are the magical equivalent of walls have been sort of flung up in a path that leads down these stairs and towards this physical wall. With the wardstone sort of in hand, just like the front door, you feel a sort of like pressure as you bring it closer to this wall.
I'm going to turn to Auric. I thought you said he was in the hospital.
That's what Steve said.
You trust Steve?
So who is in the hospital then?
Archie! Okay, I'm sorry for that thing when we were 12, but please, can you let me out of here?
Does anybody have a decent description of what is where Argus?
Oh.
I don't know if he's ever come to the...
You were the one who got the like massive history check on him.
Right.
Have we seen it? Have we
Has he come to the bar?
Or I mean, like, are the Blackthorns, like, if they're the Kennedys, like, we've seen their picture in the paper?
Because of the nature of how things shook out, Argus was not as much a part of their sort of meteoric rise.
Cool. I'm still trying this. I'm gonna point my finger through the wall and hope it's less than a foot thick. And I'm gonna say, "Are you Argus? Or who's this behind the wall?"
So something you've never experienced before happens. Your spell goes through, but you can feel it like almost like static crackling over a radio. You feel like a weird distortion as it passes through this space, and you hear a voice back that still kind of sounds muffled, even though that makes normally the spell wouldn't take that into account, but something about this space is distorting it. And the voice comes back. It gets very quiet all of a sudden. There's no more thumping. There's no more yelling.
Who is this? Why are you here? Where's Archie?
Did that come back over message, or?
That would have been back over the message.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of audible signs of life, suddenly there's nothing.
Do I have to be at my computer to do the police hack thing, or can I do that from my smartphone? And do I have signal in the basement?
All
Very
good
important
questions.
question there.
Ironically, yes, you can, depending on how intense of a thing you're wanting to do. Obviously, your phone doesn't have as many of your bag of tricks embedded in it just because of processing limitations.
Right.
You will have to go back up the stairs.
Okay.
There's no signal down here.
The voice is asking about Archie. I'm gonna point back at the. I don't really understand how this works. I just know that it always works that I can talk to people if I point at them. We're friends of Archie. How do we get you out? We can prove it. How do we get you out? Is there a button to press?
There's an awkwardly long pause. And then finally it comes back.
Well, you wouldn't have his mark if he hadn't sent you. Touch the wardstone to the wall to release me.
All right. You bring it closer, and there's kind of like a and as it gets to the wall just sort of becomes liquid and shimmers and retreats and forms like an arch. And through the arch, you see about the same dimensions that you saw upstairs for the rest of this floor. It looks like the space, and it's basically been set up as a magical panic room. You see like a small but not uncomfortable looking sort of cot pushed up against the wall. You see a lot of storage in there, what looks like emergency supplies. And you find Argus Blackthorne. He looks somewhat haggard compared to how you imagine he usually is. He actually looks very much like a Archie minus 60-ish, 70-ish pounds, and with very dark hair tinged a little bit with gray around the edges and sort of the temples. He doesn't give you an unpleasant vibe, but it's a little jarring to sort of see Archie's features without his sort of perpetual warmth coming off of them. Um,
Reminder.
and he's sort of observing you all with a critical eye. Make a perception check, folks who want to.
Oh no.
Ah,
Oh, hey, one.
Natural 20.
9.
22. Yes, my rolls are all over the place.
Mine are too. And it's just, yeah.
This makes perfect sense. Cyrus, I love when the dice just like quite literally roll with the story. Cyrus, you immediately recognize a wizard who's packing heat. The pause before he responded seems to have been him starting to hold a spell. And he's still holding it. And you can actually visibly see like crackling power across his fingertips. And you see like bruises. There's like some blood across part of his face. And he says, "Thank you very much for releasing me. Now, if you don't mind, explain why you have my cousin's ward stone before I disintegrate you."
Sure. Why do you not have an out button for your panic room?
There is normally, but unfortunately, I didn't consider what might happen if a small army of pixies was to fling themselves against it over and over and over.
Hmm.
Pixies.
It was the magical equivalent of like the door dented closed.
Well, I'm Dr. Skylark, and I'm across the hall from Archie. And
A group of Fae magically whammied your cousin trying to steal something from him. We brought him back. He sent us to look for you because he missed your meeting.
Oh,
that.
is Archie okay? Are the Fae gone? He kind of like looks out to both sides.
Yes, but I'm concerned one of them may be masquerading as you in the hospital.
In the hospital? Oh, that means my simulacrum fooled them. Excellent.
Okay, well, that's that problem.
You have to go find that.
Yes, we should not just leave that laying around where anyone might find it. It was
You might be going through surgery right now.
You're just gonna be in a coma for a few weeks until you're ready to come back.
Oh, it will be most unfortunate if they open that. It's all gelatin and starlight inside.
Christ.
It was my last failsafe. I
Well,
was
you're in the panic room.
I was preparing for Archie's visit this morning. Was it this morning?
It seems that, yes.
And I had just confirmed that we were going to meet, and I was retrieving a few things from the basement here. I felt dozens, hundreds of small Fae creatures smashing themselves across the wards up above. At first I wasn't concerned because if a Fae Lord had come knocking, it might have been a different question, but these were almost nothing. But they just kept flinging themselves. Finally, one of them managed to smash through a window, and it was like a cloud of locusts suddenly pouring in. I managed to slow them as I ran down the stairs, and they just kept smashing through one wall after another behind me. So my the panic room is my last ditch effort. When I close the panic room, it releases a passable simulacrum from one of my experiments into this chamber, and apparently it worked. They thought they must have found me and quit their search. Has anything been taken? Did they find my notes?
Your question. Where do you need to look?
Yes. I was preparing things. Most of it would have been here or in my chambers on the top floor. And he goes and starts sort of rifling through some of the things on the desk in here. And you can see that things here have been... Again, it looks very targeted. You can see now where like certain books have been pulled from the bookshelf. You also see a box that seems to match the one that Archie had. So it's possible they've been coordinating on this and sort of sharing materials. And he manages to pull up several sets of like notes and papers and sort of the paper trail he had been building. But you see him kind of look around and kind of look under things, and he says, I was afraid of that. Archie and I are not particularly popular amongst our more famous Blackthorne kin. But I had realized after several of the reports of break-ins had gone across that nearly everyone involved was either a family member, mostly distant cousins, not anyone from what you might call the main house. But it was students and disciples and apprentices and those like Archie who perhaps were never quite as powerful. I started to put the pieces together, and I reached out to let him know what I had found. And I had a whole collection here of intermediate grimoires and scrolls, and I just can't fathom why. And he sort of gestures towards the wall, and especially Cyrus, with your sort of magic eyes going on, but also Zyra as a person who knows books. These are hardcore spell books on the wall here. Every school of magic just blazing. These would be very, very valuable to any sort of powerful spellcaster. And he says, I still can't put together. It's like breaking into a garage with a sports car and stealing a tricycle.
It's a great analogy.
So we'll need to talk about that more.
Do we need to check what's upstairs?
The majority of it was here, the actual materials. I suppose what's upstairs is mostly notes, and they seem to have left those untouched.
Yes, while we're doing all this, do you recognize the sketch sigil?
Arcana check. This Arcana check brought to you by the letter A and the Muppet folk wizard Carolee von Coxwell, an arithmancer, a master of the ancient runic counting magic of Stret Isami. I'm incapable of running a normal game of D&D.
No, yeah. You keep doing it.
He sort of looks at it for a second, and he basically tells you the same thing that Archie did. Powerful Fae noble doesn't know specifically who it would be.
Does knowing that a Fae is interested in these artifacts as opposed to a spellcaster give you any indication why they would be more interested in what they took than what they left?
Not only does this not provoke a moment of enlightenment, it seems to deepen his confusion.
Okay.
Go figure.
I mean, there are Fae wizards, but they're few and far between. They're almost definitionally more inclined to the sorceress origins of magic. This only becomes stranger and stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to our day.
But you did say Archie is okay, right?
He was gonna go find a hidey hole.
That makes sense.
Maybe you need to find one too?
He gestures to the space behind him and says, "Unfortunately, the place of respite I had prepared proved somewhat inadequate. I had hoped not to have to do this, but I suppose I might have to go prevail upon Reginald."
Before you do that, do you want to exchange numbers in case you get into a...
Another fight.
Jealously, I'm turning into a pumpkin.
He says, "Oh yes, of course," and he just sort of does this and has a business card.
Fun.
And as he does this, you realize he doesn't like this. This isn't like street magic. This isn't like him like doing a sleight of hand. This is a guy who literally worked out a cantrip that just makes a business card out of thin air. And you suddenly understand a lot about this family.
I use prestidigitation to disappear it into Zyra's pocket.
He's like, "Oh."
Okay. Just to make sure there weren't any... Yeah.
One last thing, and this might be a stretch. Is there any possibility that a human mage might learn how to manipulate this Fae Sigil?
He seems to think about it for a second. It's certainly possible. The situation would have to be quite unusual, but the only thing about it is that a symbol like this, for a Fae who is powerful enough to have a sigil like this, the sigil is in some ways an extension of themselves. It might perhaps be used against them in some way, though doubtful that anything could pierce through their magical defenses. But at the same time, for someone else to really utilize the power of such a symbol, it would almost have to have been granted by the Fae themselves.
So here's the problem. The sigil is branded in cold iron on the backs of the Fae.
That sounds barbaric.
Yeah, it kind of seemed that. So, when you find your new hidey hole, just know you might have to talk to Reginald.
I hate to recommend such a course, either for myself or for others, but the other piece of this odd situation is that the Blackthorns are not the only keepers of such resources in Queensboro. We are perhaps the largest, but there are a multitude of minor workers of magic, smaller and less influential schools. It feels personal.
Is anyone making a move on the Blackthorns?
Unfortunately, I am not privy to those conversations at the moment.
Go privy yourself. And we'll hear back from you.
I will find out what I can, but it might also be worthwhile. You could reach out to the main family directly, though if I haven't heard it, it's very likely that it is being kept relatively secret. However, you might have better luck at the Blackthorne Academy. The ties there are a little more loose back to the main family, but any gossip would reach them quite quickly.
Do you recommend anyone in particular at the Blackthorne Academy?
He sort of thinks for a minute to represent me going to my list of NPCs. I have yet another cousin, though this one by marriage. Yes, Ulst Blackthorne. He's an instructor at the academy. The headmaster, Hilarion, is unlikely to either allow you to reach him or to provide any helpful information, but Ulst might be willing, especially if you can tell him that Archie and I have given our actually here and he says, hand me the ward stone. Oh, I'm not looking at the video, so yep, that's the right spelling. Yeah, I assumed, after I thought about it for a second, I was like, I bet you just did a gesture. I desperately need a second monitor set up. So he takes it, and much like Archie, he has a ring, and he presses it to the same side that Archie did. And actually, a second sigil that is very similar layers over top. You imagine the commonalities are probably some kind of family identifier. But when he hands it back to you, the symbols actually sort of explode out. Not like fire, but like the layers separate. And so you can actually see both of them sort of painted in the air above the stone. He says, our wizards are perhaps a vain lot, as you might have gathered, but especially my family. And he sort of wiggles his hand and says, the commonality with this barbaric situation notwithstanding, each member of my family has their own signet, which is recognizable to any other member. With this, you should be able to convince Ulst. And he kind of hesitates for a second, and he says, if you were seeking information from a more direct source, yeah, I suppose there's no helping it. He says you might contact Vela Blackthorne. She might be able to tell you more. she's less likely to respond favorably to Archie's name, and you shouldn't mention mine at all.
Okay.
All right then.
Do y'all
Wait.
have any other questions? Oh,
Be okay to mention that we're trying to learn about the primers and the loss of them or the taking of them.
you might think of it as high risk, high reward. Ulst is much more likely to speak to you in general, but he's less likely to have as much directly useful information. Vela is fairly close to Reginald's inner circle. She's something of a young up-and-comer. Our names will have less influence with her, but if something is afoot, she is almost certainly aware and would have a vested interest in resolving the situation.
Cool.
But again, don't mention my name. It will close doors with Vela. And I think we'll close with that because my wife is calling me to go deliver an ice cream cake for a baby shower. All right, so I'm going to cut off our stream there, and we will be back next week to continue the adventures in Queensboro.
But we can long rest.
Yes, you all are. You don't have an immediately pressing thing, so yes, you can take a long rest. And I'll kind of leave it to you all. We'll assume that you all each kind of went off to take care of your own whatever for a while. I know Lexi probably needs to make sure that the bar is going to open correctly. And others of you might want to rest or follow up in your own way. So we will leave you all to that. And if you do have anything, like if you wanted to reach out to someone, the equivalent of like shooting someone a text and then going to sleep, just let me know who you want to talk to. Also, just as a general rule, if you all feel like there should be an NPC or a location or a resource of some kind, just ask me about it, because there probably is. Queensboro is a huge city, and there's a ton of people and a ton of stuff. I don't have a like infinite, like a Queensboro Yellow Pages. So as you all think of places, we'll sort of work them out together and integrate them into the world. All right. And we're going off stream. So thanks to Oric's other account, which has been watching with us by himself. And see everybody next week.